Welcome to the Copenhagen Centre's on Energy Efficiency's first webinar. This webinar is on best practices and case studies for industrial energy efficiency improvement. We're very pleased that over 166 participants have joined the webinar, and as you know, it will be completed at 11 o'clock this morning. My name is Tim Farrell. I'm a Senior Advisor at the Copenhagen Centre on Energy Efficiency. The Copenhagen Centre on Energy Efficiency is a research and advisory institution dedicated to accelerating the uptake of energy efficiencies, policies, programs and actions globally. We serve as the Sustainable Energy for All's Energy Efficiency Hub and support the SE for All objective of doubling energy efficiency improvement by 2030. How do we do this? Well, we're doing it through a whole range of partnerships involving international organisations, and many of those are joining this webinar today. Doing it with development banks, regional partners, national governments, stakeholders, and through the Energy Efficiency Accelerator platform. The key focus areas of the Copenhagen Centre on Energy Efficiency involve capacity building in targeted countries, private sector engagement, and being a champion of energy efficiency's SE for All objective, and that includes knowledge dissemination. Today's webinar is being presented by our three authors, Stephen Fawkes, Kit Oung and David Thorpe. Stephen Fawkes is an internationally recognised expert on energy efficiency with over 30 years experience including implementing large energy efficiency management programs. And Kit Oung has 18 years of hands-on management experience in a range of commercial and industrial companies across 4 continents. And finally, David Thorpe is a consultant and author of many articles and books on the topics of carbon-free energy and sustainable development. So we're going to hear from each of our authors today, and then we're going to have a presentation from Rana, the coordinator of the Industrial Energy Efficiency Accelerator from UNIDO. So I think the presentation will cover off the key findings in the publication and talk about some of the key examples on industrial best practice. And I think it'll be nicely pulled together by Rana when she talks about how all of this good work feeds into the Industrial Energy Efficiency Accelerator that forms a key part of the Global Energy Efficiency Accelerator platform. And then there's going to be some time for questions and answers. So I encourage you, if you can, to, in the question area, send your questions in, and we'll try and address as many of those questions as possible before 11 o'clock. And any questions that we don't get to, we'll pass on to the authors, and they'll respond to those questions independently. So I'd just like to introduce Stephen Fawkes. Over to you, Stephen, the Director of Energy Pro Limited.
Thank you, Tim, and good morning, everybody. So I want to start off talking about the context and the purpose of the book. Just a few words on that before we launch into some more of the detail. I think obviously the main context is there has been this growing recognition of the importance of energy efficiency and improving energy efficiency and its importance in meeting our climate and security goals. And that's taken a long time because those of us who've been working in energy efficiency a long time have sort of always recognized that. But I think in the last few years there has been a sea change in recognition amongst policymakers of the importance of energy efficiency. I think the other main development in recent years, which is very significant, is the recognition of non-energy benefits. So when we make an improvement in energy efficiency, it's not just the energy saving or the energy cost saving. There are many, many other benefits like productivity, job creation, improved local environment, and so on. And those non-energy benefits are increasingly recognized and increasingly valued, and that will continue to grow, I think. So industry, why industry? Well, clearly industry accounts for about 29% of total final energy consumption, and 2/3 of that energy is in 4 sectors: chemical and petrochems, iron and steel, cement, pulp and paper. And the concentrated nature of industry just makes it a bit easier for policymakers to design effective policies and programs that can really impact on the energy efficiency of industry. Easier than, say, buildings, where there are thousands and thousands of different types of buildings and different sorts of buildings, and also easier than transport. So industry does have that advantage, its concentrated nature. So the purpose of the book really is to help accelerate improvement in industrial energy efficiency by supporting policymakers in either developing and implementing new policies or revamping existing policies to make them more effective, policies to improve industrial energy efficiency. So that's the overall purpose. And to do that, we pulled together both sort of principles, but also case studies from around the world. Clearly, the case for a strong energy efficiency policy possibly doesn't need too much repeating, particularly, as I said, in the light of climate goals, but I think the real driver is about doubling energy productivity would reduce the global energy bill by 2 trillion and create more than 6 million jobs by 2020, according to Ecofis's 2015 Productivity and Economic Prosperity Study. You know, those are really significant numbers, and really that is the very strong case for driving energy efficiency. We do have to recognize that energy efficiency policy and the formulation and execution of policies does present difficulties for policymakers, and these are only a few of the difficulties, but one is there is no actual market for energy efficiency. We have lots of different markets for equipment and services that produce efficiency, but there isn't an efficiency market as such. There is still a lack of understanding of the benefits, particularly these non-energy benefits which are valuable. There's a lack of data. Energy efficiency, when you think about policy aspect, often cuts across departmental borders within, or boundaries within governments, across government departments. A really big problem for energy efficiency is that it's largely invisible and it involves many, many tiny decisions, whereas of course energy supply usually involves a few very big decisions about big pieces of equipment. And also generally everywhere there is always the dominance of the energy supply industry. So all of these and other barriers to have policy do exist, and we need to recognize them and then develop policies and programs to overcome them. So the arguments for improving energy efficiency, clearly economic. You know, there have been many years of studies showing that energy efficiency is cheaper than supply options. There's also job creation, energy security, reduction in environmental impact. And these multiple non-energy benefits that I was mentioning earlier really occur at 3 levels: the host, the organization making an investment, the energy supply system, and the nation, national and even international levels. And we need to recognize all of those non-energy benefits and value them. And I think the IEA published some work that in some cases non-energy benefits can be worth 4 times more than energy benefits alone. So we really do need to start recognizing them and valuing them and building them into business cases. So I think another problem for energy efficiency sometimes in policymakers is there's still confusion about the term. Energy efficiency, as we know, is really about the ratio between the output of an end user service and the associated energy input. And that's still sometimes a subject for confusion. Many times I read stories that are headlined energy efficiency and they're not about energy efficiency at all. They're about renewables or some other aspect of energy. I'll just say a brief word about energy productivity, energy per GDP. I think this is really increasing in popularity as a target and a driver, and it has a number of advantages. But of course, energy productivity is a combination of fundamental energy efficiency and the structure of the economy. But we are seeing an increasing interest in using productivity as a driver, particularly in the US, Australia, and even in the GCC countries. There is increasing interest in targeting productivity, of which energy efficiency is one part. But it is really important to be clear about what do we really mean by energy efficiency. The potential for energy efficiency, clearly there's an economic potential, there's technical potential, and there's a theoretical potential, and many studies over many years have shown that the economic potential across many sectors is 10 to 30% of current energy use, and sometimes more. And I think the important thing is this is potential that is cost effective now, using available technology. We don't have to invent new technologies to achieve these levels of savings. We don't have to have subsidies. These things are economic at current prices and current technology. And also, for many years and many decades even, there have been examples that many industrial firms, including large chemical firms and other manufacturing businesses, have continued to improve their energy efficiency year on year. And so the potential doesn't seem to go away, and in fact in some ways, like some other energy resources, it's actually getting cheaper because we're getting better at developing technology and using technology to save energy. So just to sum up really, improving energy efficiency represents the cheapest, cleanest energy resource we have. It's very cost effective today using available technology. Industry is 29% of total energy final consumption, and industry is concentrated and therefore represents, to a certain extent, an easier sector for policymakers compared to buildings or transport, and that's why it's important to focus on it. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand over to Kit, who's going to talk about the importance of sound energy management. Over to you, Kit.
Thank you, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Kit, and I'll be talking about the importance of good energy management practices. As Tim mentioned earlier, I have nearly 18 years working with organizations trying to get energy reduction. My work and my interest is from the organization's perspective and trying to get them to do more. I'll start by sharing some statistics on energy savings from the perspective of organizations. Based on what we know today, we should be using 73% less energy based on the know-how and the technology available. This research was done at the University of Cambridge. However, they are not alone in finding these numbers. There are many other institutes that do so. For example, Frank Hotter did an independent research and they found very similar numbers. Of these, 25% can actually be achieved using very low cost and very little changes in business practices. This figure came from McKinsey. However, in this instance, they have been rather conservative because a lot of my experience and my peers' experience seems to indicate that number should be bigger. Just to put in context of what this energy savings can mean, the Department of Energy and Climate Change in the United Kingdom published its energy strategy several years back, and in that strategy it actually say if we could save on average between 21 to 47% of energy consumption, the UK do not have to build 22 power plants. Now compare this potential from what we actually are achieving. According to the IEA, we are consistently achieving approximately about 1% year on year. That's actually rather surprising that we have a 73% potential, 25% which is almost free, and yet we are achieving only about 1%. In fact, there are many research into why organizations are slow to uptake this technology and know-how. There are also a lot of research into why organizations aren't doing more. In fact, there are nearly 40 years of research into these barriers. When I actually look back into all these 40 years worth of research, there's something peculiar that I found. Most of this research are done based on collecting a group of experts, right? Experts, they brainstorm why organizations aren't doing more. Now, there lies the dilemma or the issue with these research. They were not based on organizations identifying why they're not doing more. Well, until recently, things have changed, because until recently, in fact, in 2011, Harvard actually did a research asking a bunch of CEOs and a bunch of senior management from big companies on why aren't they doing more to save energy and avert climate change. And this is the finding. And what I've done is to highlight these are the top 10 reasons why CEOs and senior managers say they're not saving energy. And what I've done is to highlight 7 out of top 10 reasons. Reasons such as failures to assess, decide effect or consequence on not doing more, uncertainty over the viability of projects, leadership attitudes towards avoiding new cost, insufficient collaboration among stakeholders in the organization, corporate culture resistant to new ideas, financial constraint, and poor innovation by the suppliers and business partners of the organization. I've highlighted these 7 for a specific reason. 7 out of 10 of these reasons that organizations say they're not doing energy savings are due to internal organizational issues or issues that the organization can do something about. It has nothing to do with the available technology. As I've mentioned, this is a study from Harvard. They are not alone. There are similar studies done by The Economist and also by Financial Times in conjunction with Cranfield Business School. Now, I classify these issues into what I call the 5 aspects of managing energy. It starts with having the right processes in place within the organization to align the whole company into a vision that they want to control and reduce energy consumption. Then it's about using the right tools and the right techniques to help organizations maximize savings and minimizing the cost and minimizing the resources available in the organization. Now, to do that, organization needs to start to use information, translate that information into knowledge and insight that energy consumption is varying with its business activities, know how to interpret those numbers, what it means to the organization, and have confidence in making decisions on those information. Once that is done, it is about bringing people along. As good as the business processes, the tools, and the information people have, unless the organization can bring people along the journey and make energy savings happen, the plan is not going to work. So it is about engaging the employees, trying to motivate them to do something about it. More importantly, it is also about engaging top management. Engage them to actually make the commitment to do the right thing, to use less because it benefits the company, it benefits the people in the company, and as Stephen said earlier, it benefits the country too. The 5th aspect is the multiplier effect, the interplay between these 4 elements and continually renewing from it. And this comes from sustaining the achieved savings and then renewing the efforts for further improvements and further energy reduction. Now, bringing these issues into a systematic framework begins by actually having companies understand where energy is consumed. So this may involve defining what key information are relevant and needs to be monitored and measured, for example, and then using this information to identify where are the energy being sent or being used. is a lot of organizations don't really know where they're using energy in their boundary. There are many organizations who does a lot of energy efficient lighting, for example, thinking they're doing a lot, but actually lighting only contribute less than 5% of the total energy consumption in the organization. So we need to know where to look at the priority areas. Then we need to show or make the organization look at how its energy consumption varies with its business activities or production. If the energy is not a variable, then there's a big problem. It means that the organization is using a lot of energy with very, very little productive use. Now, once energy cost has been demonstrated to vary with the production in this instance, then is that baseline the right baseline? Should it be a straight line relationship? Should it be a cube relationship? In the instance, once the organization is sure that the baseline is correct for the organization, then they can actually even use that relationship to measure future improvements. Then it's about finding cost-effective and credible opportunities to improve energy performance. You will notice I've used the word energy performance here instead of energy efficiency, because energy efficiency is only one way to improve energy performance. If we look at the definition of energy efficiency, it is the equivalent of energy output versus the energy input of an equipment. You could actually reduce the quantum of energy consumed by actually using less and not change the energy efficiency of the equipment. Now, once you've got all this information, it is actually about putting all this into a coherent plan, have a set of measurable plans and targets in place. Then it's about actually engaging with the management, getting them to commit to the plan, to put resources to the plan, and follow through with actions. Then the plan should actually be reviewed on a regular basis to actually see what could be improved, what went wrong, and how to actually correct from it and renew the whole plans. The key is to actually facilitate organization gain the appropriate insight at the right time and align the various processes in the organization such that they make great decisions in terms of using less energy. If you do all of this forward right, then the standards such as ISO 50001 only add bits and pieces on top of this process to make it into a cyclic, self-renewing system of works. Now, some people would want to gold plate these requirements. I would actually say there is a risk that gold plating may lead organizations to merely comply with the requirements. In fact, there are a lot of examples of people wanting to gold plate the requirement and then finding that the organizations or the companies merely do the minimum just to comply and get by. As such, gold plating requirements should actually be looked at with care and trepidations. Thank you very much, and I will transfer you to the next presenter, David.
Hello everybody. Thank you very much, Kit, and I'm going to talk about information-led policies, which is one type of policy that we cover in the book, because obviously we need to overcome the lack of awareness and lack of knowledge amongst generally in industry and in policymakers about achieving energy efficiency. But what is very important, and what you should be aware of from what Kit has said, is that it's not sufficient by its own for people to know exactly what they should be doing, because we have 40 years of experience of finding that out. People need to be aware of timely and targeted information.
David, can you just put your slides up, please?
My slide is up.
Moment.
Can you not see my slide?
No.
It is on the screen. I can see it. So
Can we?
if you can't see it, then somebody hasn't transferred
Okay.
my screen.
Can we take control?
It's not on the screen.
There we are. Is that better? Can you see it?
Next slide.
Yes, David.
Shall I proceed?
Information-led policies.
Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. As I was saying, it is necessary but not sufficient by itself to supply the correct, timely and targeted information to the right people in an appropriate way that they can understand it. That is at the time when they're making the right decisions and so on and so forth. But as we've discovered, simply providing information does not automatically lead to the correct actions. It's very important to bear in mind how people actually make decisions. There's been quite a lot of research into decision making and into the way in which human beings are actually not rational creatures. For example, we've learned a lot in the way that research has been done into climate change and the apprehension of climate change. If people were rational, then they would be making all the right decisions to limit climate change. But we are not. So the British Psychological Society has done some very interesting investigations into decision-making processes and found that that decision and subsequent behaviours are not always the product of a rational, deliberative and individual evaluation, but they're likely to be based on opportunistic or emotional impulses, on habits and cultural traditions and social norms, as well as all kinds of other contextual factors. As we've heard in the boardroom, there can be different objectives, there can be different kinds of strategies that companies want to proceed with, and this means that energy efficiency is not prioritized. However, we still need to provide and disseminate information in the right way. And when we do this, traditionally, we're talking about the why, the what, and the how we should do it. Why should we take action? What kind of management systems should we put into place? For example, Kit has mentioned ISO 50001. Specific techniques such as measurement and verification, so that we can measure what we're doing, we can verify the results, and we can make targets and things that we need to then measure our progress against, and technology options for specific industry sectors, as well as specific advice on how to implement management systems and technologies. So effective interventions, what are they? Well, the most effective interventions will incorporate both financial and non-financial elements, psychological and non-psychological measures. For example, prioritizing actions that will bring the greatest benefits, sufficient financial incentives to reward behavior, latest knowledge of how people learn and change, effective marketing, good quality training, meaningful information at critical decision-making points, quality assurance, and award schemes that recognize excellent behavior. Training can cover aspects of an effective energy management system. Energy auditing, measurement and verification, building business cases so that management can see the benefits of implementing an energy management system, and specific technical matters. Standard qualifications for energy managers can be developed, and government can assist appropriate institutions to develop and accredit courses. Now, the features of an ongoing energy efficiency campaign should encourage firms to develop an energy management program, to set up and review energy reduction targets, to undertake their annual energy audit and report annually on their energy performance. A good model for the provision of actual information no longer exists, unfortunately, but in the 1990s, the UK's Energy Technology Support Unit published hundreds and hundreds of information sheets that were very specific for individual sectors and for individual technologies within those sectors. They were profusely illustrated and really incredibly useful, and when that organisation was handed over to the Carbon Trust, unfortunately that work was lost. But it is an excellent model should any country wish to follow it. Now, our book contains a number of case studies, but one worth highlighting here is in Ireland, the Large Industry Energy Network, which is a network of peer-to-peer communication for 166 large energy users, where they meet and exchange information regularly amongst themselves, if you like, bootstrapping their fellows up the ladder of improvements in energy efficiency and energy productivity. And over the years in which this has been in progress, then there's been a number of investigations into how well they've been doing. And one of the interesting findings is that the majority of a company's energy savings can come from operational changes alone, rather than from capital-intensive equipment-related projects. It's not to say that people don't need to spend money on implementing new kit in their plants, but many improvements can be made by just changing behavior. Now, this is true even many years down the line. Companies can still find ways to save further and further money. Now, product labeling is another strategy that can be used that comes under the heading of information-led policies, because information at the point of purchase can help buyers to choose the most efficient equipment. But product labels must be regularly revised and updated every few years, and this helps to stimulate technical progress in the production of new technology and therefore steady improvement in energy efficiency. Good examples of these are the European Union's eco-design and energy labelling directives, and many different technologies are covered by these, such as motors, pumps, fans, power transformers, and so on and so forth. Capacity building is also very important and an aspect of training, building up the skills of the workforce in a particular country, and should typically promote the use of standards such as ISO 50001 and the International Performance Measurement and Verification Protocol. Now, a scheme that does this that's worth noting is the United States Superior Energy Performance Program, a global version of which has been adopted, the global SEP, and incorporated into the G20's Energy Efficiency Action Plan in 2014. If you're looking for case studies on this, then you could find them on the web in the Energy Management Working Group section. And features of this project include independent auditing of facilities, that is, auditing of plants by an outside auditor, assigning individuals clear responsibility for achieving results so everybody knows what they have to achieve and when they have to achieve it by, providing a special tool which is an energy performance indicator regression analysis tool, which means that they can filter out all the external factors that might be affecting changes in energy use to see what is actually being saved, and then finally the recognition of good results by awards. Another example is the US Better Buildings, Better Plants scheme, and in this the CEO of a company commits to doing a variety of things over a 10-year period, and in exchange they receive from the US Department of Energy technical training, access to tools, webinars, technical guidance documents, peer-to-peer networking, and so on. And training is specific on lots of different kinds of technologies, but this is kind of, if you agree to play ball with me, then I will play ball with you, is the general approach being taken there. So people do need recognition. Part of the psychology of improvement and behavior change, people do appreciate recognition and being rewarded for their achievements. So different countries and different companies actually run their own reward programs. They're essential for encouraging excellence. The criteria of these programs vary enormously. For instance, some are run by the governments of countries in China, in the US, in Japan and Germany. For instance, Germany's criteria is that a measure that's recognized has to be transferable to other companies so that they can emulate it. In the UK and in Asia, these award schemes are run by third-party organizations. This kind of gives the responsibility to industry themselves and to industry bodies to recognize good performance in their own areas. In conclusion, information provision, training and awareness raising are vital to changing behavior, but alone they are not sufficient. Incentives and ongoing monitoring and support are needed also, and a real understanding of how people change their behavior. We must cover benefits, studying energy management systems and specific technology, wider benefits such as health benefits, and promoting standards such as ISO 50001. Peer-to-peer networks often work better than centralized top-down provision, although the latter is necessary, because you're more likely to accredit value to information you receive from your peers than from figures of authority in some cases. Training is important for capacity building, the labeling of products is useful, and award schemes for successful energy efficiency programs and projects does really help to motivate. Thank you very much, and I now hand over back to Stephen Fawkes.
Thanks, David. So I'm going to talk about financing policies, and financing of energy efficiency is a growing area, one that I spend much of my time involved in these days. The challenge that we have is how to finance the increased investment in energy efficiency that we need to implement to affect our climate and security goals. And that investment can either be from the host balance sheet or it can be third-party investment. And of course, there's a growing interest in accelerating third-party investment. Because of the amounts of money that are involved, we really do need to start to access the capital markets to invest in energy efficiency. The current levels of investment into energy efficiency are quite hard to measure, but the IEA Energy Efficiency Markets report estimated somewhere between 310 to 360 billion a year. But they say that to achieve the 450 scenario, that this needs to increase to 1.1 trillion a year, which is something not far. It's kind of equivalent to the amount on energy supply investment at the moment. So about 60% of current energy efficiency is self-financed, and as I said, we really need to increase third-party investment from the capital markets. And we know from talking to institutional investors and working with them every day, there's a large amount of capital that now wants to invest in energy efficiency. It's seen the advantages, it's seen that it's economic today, and it's very keen to invest in efficiency. But there are a number of barriers to that happening, and some of the barriers are the projects are very small, particularly compared to the size of institutional investors and the checks they need to write. It's sometimes difficult to measure the outcome. It's seen as boring and non-strategic, and as we said at the beginning, really, it's sometimes the results are invisible, and even the technology is invisible because it's hidden away and embedded into processes and buildings. So there are many other barriers to investing in energy efficiency, and that's just a few that we need to overcome. to increase investment, really there's three fundamental ways. You can improve financial returns, making an investment more attractive, and you can do that by grants, you could do it by offering low-cost finance, and you can also do it by reducing transaction costs through standardization. And one of the big barriers in energy efficiency at the moment is that transaction costs are very high because there is a lack of standardization. You can also reduce the risk, and you can do that by various guarantee mechanisms. And of course, you can also increase the available funds by establishing or catalyzing the establishment of specialized funds, and also aggregation vehicles, which can ultimately lead to projects being aggregated and capital being raised on the secondary markets, so things like the bond market. We're quite a long way away from that happening at scale, but it is definitely one of the ways forward. So you can also have fiscal measures, of course, playing around with the tax system. In the UK, we have had a system of enhanced capital allowances for certain types of energy efficiency equipment. That's all going to change fairly shortly. And in Sweden, there is a very good program for improving energy efficiency to intensive industries where the exemption from energy consumption tax is applied if companies implement 50,001 and demonstrate improvement in efficiency. And then there are various grant schemes around the world. We picked out Chile's electric motor grant scheme. It seems to have been particularly effective. And that's obviously a country with a lot of mining and industry that uses some fairly big electric motors. Specialized funds, there are a number of these around the world. More have been set up in recent years. Argentina has an energy efficiency fund, Thailand has an ESCO fund, and China has its utility-based energy efficiency finance program. And then in the UK, we have the Green Investment Bank, which has set up a number of specialized energy efficiency funds. But there are a number of lessons that have come out of this activity in the last few years. Just providing finance on its own is not enough. Money alone doesn't really get the job done. There's a real strong need for project development assistance, so that's helping companies actually develop projects to the point at which they can become financeable. And there's also a strong need for what I call investment infrastructure, and that includes standardization through tools such as the Investor Confidence Project, which is more buildings orientated at the moment, but will be moving into industry fairly soon. And these are tools that just reduce the cost of investing. So that's the really important lesson in this area. You cannot just put money into a fund and expect it to be deployed. You have to look at all the parts of the jigsaw. So there is this need to accelerate the rate of investment into energy efficiency, and that's both internal investment and third party. You really need this systematic approach that addresses provision of funding, project development, and then capacity building on both demand and supply side, as well as in the finance industry. And the best examples from around the world, like the China Energy Efficiency Fund, the Argentinian Fund, and a few others, really do address all of those issues. But it is clear that these issues will be addressed, and that growth of third-party finance through various types of energy services, energy performance contracts, and others will be significant in future. We really do need to increase that rate of investment into energy efficiency. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand over to Rana from UNIDO to talk about global action on energy efficiency for industry.
Thank you very much. Just before Rana jumps in, I'll just ask all the participants, if you do have any questions, could you please put them in the question field, and we'll try and address as many as possible after Rana's presentation. Thank you, Rana.
Good morning, everyone. I'd also like to take this opportunity to congratulate the authors and also the colleagues from C2E2 on this important publication. I really think it's very timely, and all of what the colleagues have been saying about energy efficiency, this is exactly now what we are trying to take up in a global platform that supports action on energy efficiency in industry. The platform has been set up under the Sustainable Energy for All Accelerator platform, which is a platform that is supported by the colleagues in the C2E2 hub. The Industry Accelerator is one of a number of other accelerators also servicing building sector, appliances, district energy, and so on. So UNIDO has been together with the Institute for Industrial Productivity and the Energy and Resource Institute from India, we have been co-leading the development and the initiation of this industry accelerator. So what are we doing basically under the accelerator? It's really working on disseminating all of these good practices that the colleagues have just summarized. So be it on a policy level or be it also tools and training programs that have been tested in different places around the world and trying to disseminate them into a larger group of countries, but also looking into the financing option, and they're interacting with the different financial institutions. So the main target of the accelerator is to actually facilitate the implementation of energy management systems, technologies, and practices in the global industrial energy use. So as we have heard from Kit, energy management systems have proven to be really effective in delivering energy efficiency in industry, and they've brought about some great results in different countries around the world. So in terms of the categories of countries that we are looking into targeting, so as a priority we've set up two categories of countries. The first one is for countries where the large industries account for over 50% of the global energy consumption, and the second category of countries is where SMEs actually have a good saving potential of 15 to 25%. So this is something that that is also being still validated as we work into more the operationalization strategy of the accelerator, but that's more or less the framework based on which we are operating. So in addition to UNIDO, IIP, and TERI, we have a number of other partners, some of which have also been mentioned by the colleagues. So for example, the Energy Management Working Group, which is set up under the Clean Energy Ministerial, they have been quite a supportive partner. They bring in a lot of good knowledge and a lot of good tools for dissemination. The Department of Energy, the Institute for Energy Efficiency in Production based in Germany, IPEC, the Carbon Trust, and also some private sector companies such as Dow Chemicals have been some of the supporting organizations. At the country level, we engage with different types of stakeholders, be it governmental ones such as the ministries of energy or environment or industry, but also different industry associations, banks, and NGOs. What we try to achieve within the accelerator is actually to get commitments from different partners depending on their responsibilities. So for example, from the government, what we try to support them to achieve is to put up a program that supports the dissemination of energy management systems in industries. And then for the public utilities, we work with them to put in place some systems that incentivize the energy management systems through their different demand-side energy management programs. That's of course provided that industry is a main client for those utilities, and of course the focus in that be more on the energy-intensive sectors. With financial institutions, we work with, of course, specialized partners to mainstream energy efficiency financing into their loan operations. So educating at the country level the different financial institutions on how to assess energy efficiency projects and to make this part of their mainstream business. On the industrial company side, so this is a main engagement that we do with the private sector, where we really work directly with the companies on implementing energy management and getting ISO 50001 certification as well. And then in some cases, we also work with industry associations. So I believe that the publication, for example, refers to the Dutch experience, where we have seen that industry associations play a key role in bringing about commitments from certain sectors towards energy efficiency. So this is also one of the stakeholders that we try to seek for commitments from. So through interacting with this various set of stakeholders and allocating different responsibilities for them, we're hoping that we're actually contributing to the SE for All goal, which is now actually also part of the SDG 7, to double the rate of energy efficiency in the industrial sector. So what does the accelerator offer? Well, as policies, capacity building, financing, and knowledge sharing have been the 4 core areas that have been mentioned also by all of the speakers to be needed to really support an accelerated rate of energy efficiency in the industrial sector. So these are the 4 main offerings. So each one of us and our partners have programs and tools to advocate in developing countries, and so we try to put together a package that provides, support depending on the need that is coming from the different countries. How do you get engaged? And maybe before that, actually, just to tell you who is already engaged. So we already have at least around 15 countries that work with us actively on implementing such policies and programs on energy management in industries. That does include a number of countries in Asia, such as Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, and even India. Then we have also a few countries in Latin America, such as Colombia and Ecuador. We have a few countries in Africa, including South Africa and Egypt. And in Europe, we actually work with Moldova, Russia, and Macedonia. So all of these countries have been now part, and we have a number of case studies that we're bringing about that we want to disseminate within the accelerator. There are also some cities. I see that one of the questions that was posted on the side was whether we see cities as a possible way of engaging with industries. Certainly, that's provided, of course, like industries are a major target group within that city. So, for example, in Russia, we have around 3 regions, let's say, so it's a little bit beyond cities that have committed towards the accelerator to implement energy management and within industrial enterprises. There's also quite a big program that was run together with Accenture, actually, on mobilizing private sector commitments, and that was highlighted at the COP. You might have heard about it, We Commit. So this was a major initiative that mobilized commitments from private sector companies, exceeding 200 actually, that have made official commitments towards energy efficiency in their production and practices. So if you want to get engaged, you should really get in touch with us. We are working on setting up our own website, but for the time being, there's also the website of the energy efficiency platform, where we have some of the data about our accelerator, but also other accelerators. So do get in touch with us, and depending on what is your interest and what you can bring into the table, then we can discuss a more concrete way of cooperation. That's more or less sums up my intervention, and I'd like to hand back, I believe, to Mr. Thorpe to take up the final questions.
Hi, thanks, Rana. It's Steve. Well, we still have time for some more questions. There is one question. Is there any experience of financing industrial energy efficiency projects through ESCOs in a developing country, and what are the factors for success? I think there are examples. Comes to mind some Chinese examples, and maybe from the Thai ESCO fund. I think industrial ESCO projects generally are difficult all over the world. I think the success factors that enable them to happen are around facilitation and assistance and project development assistance, and helping both sides, both the customer and the ESCO, get through what is a very complex structure and complex deal. I think that applies to ESCO deals in all sectors and all markets, really. But I think there are definitely examples of industrial ESCO projects out there. And then the other question which Rana referred to was about whether municipal or city governments rather than national governments can influence industrial energy efficiency. I think clearly they can influence. They would typically have less legal powers over industry, but they have a very common interest with the municipality or the city in economic development. And I think what we're seeing in some countries, including here in the UK, is a sort of increased municipal involvement in energy efficiency, including in buildings, the built environment, but also in industry, in the municipality itself. So I think it's starting to happen, but it's that common interest in economic development really that should drive it more. We don't seem to have any more questions. Does anybody else want to say anything about either of those two questions? Any of the other panelists?
If there's no further comments from our speakers, that's perfectly on time. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. Very interesting presentations, and I think it supports the most interesting publication. I encourage you to have a look at our website to have a look at the full publication. We heard from Stephen Fawkes, who provided the context and purpose of the book, including the purpose and the important role of the industrial sector in energy consumption and energy efficiency improvement. He also talked about the multiple benefits of energy efficiency improvement in industries. We heard from Kit explain the great importance of sound energy management, followed by a presentation from David on information-led policies, including the benefits and concrete examples of information-led policies for several countries. We then heard from Stephen again talking about the finance policies and various ways to increase investment in industrial energy efficiency improvement. And that all provided great context and information and resource for Rana from UNIDO, who talked about the Sustainable Energy for All's Global Energy Efficiency Accelerator platform, and specifically about the Industrial Energy Efficiency Accelerator. And there's lots of opportunities for the private sector in countries and cities to be engaged in this accelerator. So thank you very much, Rana. So just in conclusion, as I mentioned, this is the first webinar of the Copenhagen Centre on Energy Efficiency, and I'd just like to thank the effort that the presenters have put in and all the participants that have listened to this webinar. I can see from the comments that are coming through that there's lots of participants that want to get engaged with the speakers, so we'll arrange and link you with the speakers to ask you specific questions. I know that we had questions there from Nigeria asking about energy efficiency improvement in the industrial sector. But we know from the Copenhagen Centre, based on our efforts, that best practices on energy efficiency is ranked as one of the highest priorities that countries and cities and the private sector are interested about. There's lots of lessons to be learned, and this publication draws on dozens of examples on energy efficiency. And to complement this, I think that our next webinar will be on broadening best practices on energy efficiency to include other sectors, including the industrial sector. So look out for the next webinar that we're going to be offering shortly. As you'll participate in this webinar, you'll be invited to the next webinar and the following webinars. But again, if there's areas of interest on topics for webinars, please send them through to us and we can try and arrange to have a webinar on areas of interest to participants. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website www.energyefficiencycentre.org. Thank you again for everyone for your participation, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Goodbye.